Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 3 of Old Testament Survey. I'm just going to give a brief overview of this week. I think in terms of last week, all I'm going to say at this point is, for instance, your quiz grades were right at where they should be, to be honest, although they probably scared a lot of you, even though I told you to expect quiz grades to be much less than you would normally expect. You know, you're only getting 10 points for these quizzes. So if you're getting a 6 or 7 on them, I would say you're doing fine. If you're doing above that, that's great. If you're going below that, also okay. Has not that won't ruin your grade by any means, but you want to aim, to be averaging in that 6 or 7 at least range to be able to, to get a great grade in the class. Um, if you're getting a 3 or a 4 on those, not that's not great, but that's also not going to kill your grade. These quizzes are meant to kind of balance out your grade because all the other assignments are really effort-based grades. These quizzes are really the only thing that are more geared at really testing your ability to comprehend and apply the information and um, yeah, so you're doing the work. It's okay if you're not doing great on those. The average score for the whole class was 6.4 out of 10 for that quiz, and that's right where it should be. So don't freak out. You're not failing the class if you're getting in that range. Um, but yeah, your goal should be to be at least getting in that 6 or 7 when you average out all the quiz scores altogether. So if I see by the end of the class that everyone is doing poorer than normal and should be, I'll probably give a chance for extra credit and that sort of thing, and we can go from there. But for this week, here's your reading. Pretty basic. Hill and Walton, chapter 10 to 15, and then here's your Bible reading for this week. Fill out the reading report when you're done. And then you've got several assignments due this week. So um, play, pay close attention. You should be getting really good marks on all of them. They're not difficult assignments by any stretch of the imagination. And then you'll notice that this is a heavy week with assignments, and then next week you basically just have a discussion board. You don't have a discussion this week. The next really intense week is probably going to be week 6, and so work hard this week, get these done. Don't stress out, exponentially over these. Do good work. It's definitely better to do more work than less work on these. But let me go over the introduction, the interaction, the critical scholarship, so that you understand that. What this is, it's going to be a paper that focuses on one of two topics of your choice. So you're either going to write on the JEDP theory and the concept of Deuteronomistic history. Just Google that stuff, you will find what it is. Or form criticism and the social setting of Old Testament poetry and prophecy. Now, well, first of all, let me say this is 2 to 3 pages in length and comply with MLA guidelines. So this is an MLA format paper. You can see in your uh, uh, where do we put that in your well, first of all, you can just Google MLA format and what that looks like. All your Moody papers, should be written in MLA unless otherwise noted. Because you haven't even finished, college writing yet, and you're going to take research writing as well. I go pretty soft on your first papers in terms of how we grade, but in general, with MLA, you are going to use some resources. You can use either academic journals or online sources or books if you find them in books. That means that you'd have a bibliography page at the end of what you used. And then the MLA thing is where if you use a source, you're putting at the end of that section, the author. So Johnson, comma 1 to 15, if those are the pages you were quoting from or using for that section or whatever. Um, that's the gist of how MLA guidelines work. But for this paper, I'm really more concerned for you to just answer the questions. You definitely need to tell me when you're quoting and where you're quoting from. but I'm not going to be super critical on like what your sources were as long as you had pretty good info. So for instance, what I want you to do is, basically cut and paste these questions, put them in a Word document. You would put a title at the top, Interaction with Critical Scholarship Assignment. Then you'd put these questions, you'd put them in bold, and then simply answer the questions underneath. So the first one, you'd have that one in bold, and then under that, you'd write you'd write underneath it, a paragraph or two or whatever you need to answer the question. It will well, you'll have Times New Roman 12-point font. Um, and double spaced, unless I mean, I don't mind if you do single space when you're answering these paragraph questions. Just make sure there's a space between between the questions or between each paragraph. Um, but typically it'd be double spaced. Make sure that I can just see what question you're answering throughout the paper. So you're essentially going to pick one of these two um, topics, and then you're going to answer what are the main assertions of the position. So, what is the JEDP theory? And what is form criticism? Um, who are some of the major scholars historically associated with the position? So you're looking up who are the people that started talking about this and are debating this. So that means you're probably going to look at a couple of different resources to figure that out. So Google is going to help you with that. You might find a great article through the ATLA religion database, which we've mentioned, already. Um, we have posted a video on Facebook on how to access that. But you can do that. You can look up journal articles, but then even just Googling and using things like Wikipedia, in this case, actually would probably be quite helpful to get the basics in terms of who are the people associated with these things. And who are some contemporary scholars who hold this view? So who are people, if it's an older theory, how did it originally get started, and who are the people talking about it today? So you might have to do a few searches to find that out. And in what ways is this position helpful to an evangelical position on the Old Testament? And in what ways is it harmful to an evangelical position on the Old Testament? So you'll see there's some controversial dynamics here associated with it. Now, just as a reminder, here's the ATLA religion database. When you get to it, you would just type in certain things, like I typed in here, form criticism. Excuse me, one more. Excuse me again. Um, Form criticism in the social setting of the Old Testament. For this instance, I think that the ATLA religion database is just okay for these topics. Um, but you can find some stuff in here. You can also simply, I think I just Googled over here. Yeah, so I put in Googling form criticism in the social setting of Old Testament poetry and prophecy. Oftentimes, when you're looking up a theme and you're using journal articles, that's what ATLA is really great for. When you're kind of looking at like historically how has a certain topic been used and what's the debate on it, the internet, Googling it is going to give you some helpful things as well. So you can even look at, okay, what's form criticism? That may not get you all the dynamics of looking at the social setting in the Old Testament, but you'll at least get a solid. I mean, this is Oxford Biblical Studies online, so this is going to be a pretty reliable resource. Just to explain what form criticism is, so you could use a resource like that to explain that. And then this entire, you can see Gordon.edu. So that's actually a theological institution that's having a PDF article available online that specifically talks about Old Testament poetry as a vehicle for historiography. That might be a very good um, one there. Use of genre, bbc.edu, probably a decent, reliable resource. So that's one element if you're doing the form criticism thing. Um, you might look it up separately, so you can look up form criticism and then just look up something like social setting of Old Testament poetry and prophecy and see if that brings up anything else. Um, and then JEDP theory. I just, Google that. You see Theopedia. This gives you a rundown of what this is. It also shows you things like source criticism that you might want to look into more of what that is. It explains kind of the tension there. And then what I think is helpful here is it has resources that I would recommend you looking up. So you can look up those. You can look up more things on here, like it'll go into more detail on the JEDP theory, the, and some of those resources. Um, and a lot of these would be great for you to look up as you go, trying to get some context to the whole thing. But you can also then, for more reliable articles, look it up there, or simply go back. You see, I googled it back here. So this is not a difficult research article. This is more just having you interact with academic concepts and different tensions that you see. So you can see all sorts of things come up when you look at this, and you're probably going to want to find some evangelical opinions on this. Um, Here, this is actually given the Graf-Wellhausen hypothesis, or JEDP theory. I would imagine that Graf-Wellhausen is maybe one of the historical persons associated with it, as well as this guy. I mean, I'm even just reading the Google titles, and you're going to see this is going to be probably a good one to show you some of the people historically associated with this position and that sort of thing. So that gives you a good start. Let me know if you have questions, and that's essentially the critical scholarship assignment. Now, now you've got the genre analysis assignments. Now, keep in mind, with all these kind of assignments that are pretty straightforward, we're not going to give you tons of feedback on them. We're just making sure that you're doing the work and you're finding the info on these, both the critical scholarship and the genre analysis. So we're not going to give you tons of feedback with grading unless you did it wrong. At the end of the week, we'll probably post a student um, who did a great job with it, and hey, this is a great example of exactly what we were looking for, and then you can kind of compare that to what you had. But a lot of this stuff isn't you giving your own opinion and you applying things. This is you showing that you've been able to find these concepts and interact with them a little bit. So don't expect a ton of feedback on these, because one, we've got lots of students, and just 3 assignments just for 1 week. So and we're trying to get them back in a timely fashion. So with the narrative analysis, this is just a 1-page paper. I'll let you go to 2 pages. Some of you will find that you can find quite a bit of info, and it's hard to put it in the 1 page. But this is on the narrative genre. Okay, so again, we're processing through. Hopefully, this isn't brand new to you, but you're starting to see with fresh eyes how the Bible works with its different genres. The Bible is a literary document that writes differently in different books. And in understanding the difference between poetry and narrative and historiography drastically influences the way that you're applying and looking at and analyzing the book. And in a lot of ways, it helps to steer you away from making errors that could be avoided. A lot of the errors people make are just that they're using certain parts of the Bible in ways they were never meant to be used, and that's pretty easy to discern if you just understand genre. So 1-page paper, and you're going to include the following points. So a 1 to 2 sentence description of the genre. So I'd like you to divide this up similar to this, where you take these 3 elements and you'll put them in bold. So you can literally just cut and paste this, and in bold put a 1 to 2 sentence description of the genre. Under that, give a 1 to 2 sentence description of the genre, meaning like, what is narrative? So describe what the narrative genre is, and then most of this can be taken from your textbook, but you can also use like what it says here: the relevant sections of Cracking Old Testament Codes, the textbook, should be read in conjunction with this assignment. You should also include a bibliography consisting of at least 2 sources other than your textbook. And again, you can use the ATLA database that I just used, or other articles from credible internet sources. So with this, try not to use, I mean, you can use things like Wikipedia or Theopedia to start with, but I'd prefer that you then use and cite the sources at the bottom So if you're going to use like Theopedia, you would see that it uses actual good sources down here, or at least tends to be better resources. And I prefer you to go down and cite and look up those sources and use those rather than just saying, oh, I got it all off of Wikipedia or Theopedia. Because honestly, sometimes it can give you exactly what you're looking for, and that's just too easy. I'd like you to actually go to the sources of who's saying these things. Um, so you're going to use Cracking Old Testament Codes and then at least two solid resources, either from the Atla Religion Database or credible internet sources, or a book if you happen to have books, but that tends to be a little bit more labor intensive to find. So you're going to give a 1 to 2 sentence description of the genre, a bulleted list of this genre, the narrative genre's major characteristics. So that can be um, one sentence thing or one worded kind of bulleted list of what narrative is, or it can be a phrase. But I'd like you to then, if you just give a 1 to 2 worded phrase in a bulleted list, also then give a little bit of a descriptive sentence or two. The more you give there helps me understand if you're way off on the bulleted list. It helps to at least let me see, okay, this is where they were trying to go with it. And then the main piece is to give at least one paragraph summary of the genre's function. So what is the purpose of this narrative genre? What is it meant to do? Um, for instance, it says here, genealogies often function to legitimate the position of a particular individual or group. Um, you're not doing genealogies, you're doing narrative. So what is the function and purpose of narrative, and how does it work um, in Scripture? Okay, and plenty of resources you can find online, and you'll even find a lot of the info in Cracking Old Testament Codes. In a lot of ways, you'll find everything you need here, but we're forcing you to use an additional two sources that's going to beef up what you're writing here and show that you're not just regurgitating the information that you read for this week's reading, but you're also looking up other sources and interacting with that as well. Um, the historiography is exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing as narrative, but you're doing it on historiography or the historical genre. So you can either, when you're looking things up, you can do the historical genre, history genre, historiography genre. They're all basically the same thing. Um, and go from there. All right. So any questions, let me know and enjoy it. Have a great week. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.